The first excerpt that I want to read for you all today comes from the third chapter in my book. And this chapter is titled I Hate You. And it is a chapter where I am reflecting on and taking the reader through my elementary school experiences. And so the excerpt that I'm going to read for you all today is actually the end of the chapter where I'm doing a summation or a summary of my thoughts regarding my elementary school experience. So again, this is an excerpt from chapter 3, I Hate You. Who taught you to hate yourself from the top of your heads to the soles of your feet? Who taught you to hate your own kind? These words, directed to an audience of hundreds of Black people, loudly came from Malcolm X's mouth during a speech at the funeral of Ronald Stokes in May of 1962 in Los Angeles, California. Before saying these words, he condemned the United States for their lack of school integration through the Supreme Court ruling, though the Supreme Court ruling on Brown v. Board of Education happened 8 years prior. He went on to say, who taught you to hate the race you belong to, so much so that you don't want to be around each other? I have listened to that speech many times within the last year and have reflected on Malcolm's question, who taught you to hate yourself? As I think about my elementary school experience, I believe it was a breeding ground for the hatred that Malcolm spoke of. Though I had experienced the consequences of systemic racism in our American society before entering elementary school, my time there cultivated, developed, and normalized the hatred. From the mistreatment of Black students in my classrooms, to the hatred Black boys had for me and I for them, to the lack of positive, liberatory teaching of Black history and Black contributions to the United States, to the academic tracking that once again segregated students by race beginning in 4th grade, to discriminatory comments made by teachers. All of these elements taught hate. They taught the Black student to hate who they were and to see themselves as less in a society built on their oppression. They taught Black students that they were second-class citizens and schools meant to educate them. They taught them that being around one another was not a positive circumstance, but rather a negative one. They taught that suppression was the only way to survive. So if I had the privilege to be in the audience on that day in Los Angeles in 1962 and respond to Malcolm's question, who taught you to hate yourself? I would answer that our American schools are one of the biggest teachers of self-hatred to Black and brown people in this country. And in my experience, it begins early in elementary school. I would go on to argue that in any good lesson, you should be able to see the outcomes of what was taught. And by looking at the state of Black students based on statistics, by the time they enter middle school, the lesson in self-hatred is one of the best our educational system teaches.